awkward on this computer. All right, perfect. Well, hello everyone. Welcome to another edition of 1+1, your place for inconvenient truth-telling and myth-busting. And we are rejoined on this special Black History Month special, or Make Me Want to Holler, all things to Black diaspora, whether they're in the US, whether they're in the UK or Canada. And we are rejoined by, I believe your position is economics editor and contributor and contributing editor to Your World News, right, Troy?
Yep, that works.
Exactly, and we are joined by the economics editor and contributing editor to Your World and News, Troy Moten, who's been a past guest on this program many times to discuss the issues that we often talk about, which is liberation of our people and the plight of our people. And so let's get into it. So first off, Troy, thank you so much for coming back on the program, especially on Black History Month.
You're welcome, and thank you.
It's an honor to have it's an honor to have you back on the program. And before we get into a historical figure that I think we should, if not celebrate, we should definitely critically, look at the arguments and the studies that he's made. But before we get to the historical figure that we're going to talk about, what is the state of affairs right now? Because as people know, I'm not actually based in Turtle Island. I'm based in Belgium. So what is the state of the Black liberation movements, the Black civil rights movements? Some call it Black Lives Matter. What is the current state of what is the current state of affairs, especially with respect to police brutality, which was a subject I had to unfortunately visit twice on the program with past guest Desmond Cole, and yesterday with Bernita L. Haynes and L. Jones. So briefly, if you can, what's the current state of our movement and the vicious white supremacy that we're up against?
Well, it depends who you ask. Some may say it's moving forward. Some may say it's stagnant. Some may say it's moving backwards. And depending on what metrics you use, there could be an argument made for either case. I would say it's, I got high standards when I actually want liberation and freedom and justice and respect and equality. And so I would say it's we'll say stagnant. We'll because there are several good things going on, and then there's several places where we're not making progress. So an example of something that may be seen as a good thing is the reparations discussion is being taken seriously in the United States in some areas. For instance, in some parts of California, there are actually local groups that are actually forming, local organizations that are forming and actually talking to the local politicians there. And they're having several committees that seem to be taking them seriously and actually forming rationales and actually putting together proposals as to how reparations should be delivered to the people there. I saw a news article the other day talk about San Francisco wants to give $5 million to each Black descendant of slave there. I don't know how serious that was, but the fact that it actually was a local article is something that wouldn't have been a decade ago. So I saw something about the Boston mayor put together a local team of people to at least plan or talk about the feasibility of reparations. So that's good that conversation is being taken more seriously. A couple of years ago, Congress had some characters up in front of them to talk about reparations, some of them less serious than others. But I don't believe on a federal level we're making much progress. They're talking about HR 40, which is simply a study of reparations, and we don't need a study where reparations has been very much studied. We just needed to move forward and to actually put it in action. So there's some progress on that. There's a few people that are really taking that seriously. But on the front of other issues, as far as Black wealth, the Black wealth gap is still widening. The healthcare, and for Black people, there's not many major grasp, and now we're still falling behind in many health metrics, many health outcomes. When it comes to Black employment, the employment in the U.S. is all over the place, and in general. And whenever employment numbers go down in the U.S., that means Black unemployment numbers are much worse. When it comes to police terrorism, they were not making much progress there. Derek Chauvin, the murderer of George Floyd, he may have got some jail time, but I also heard that the last year was the most violent as far as police brutality is concerned. There were more police brutality victims last year, a record number of police brutality incidents. So just because one or two or a handful of cops get proper punishment doesn't mean that the problem's fixed at all. And that's a systematic issue that needs to be totally overhauled. So definitely a lot of work to do. Much work to do.
So we got our work cut out for us. But then I have to ask this question, and I'm curious your response, briefly, if it's even possible. Where I mean, in the state you're based in, Maryland, which has a huge Black population, a very visible Black community, and a very visible Black community. I'm curious where, are the local Black Lives Matter or those who who read outlets like Hood Communism, Your World News, Black Agenda Report, like where is the movement there when it comes to demanding an end to the drug war, if not abolition of the police, at least community control over the police, the way Nefta Freeman and the late Glenn Ford articulated how community control over the police should be, and where are the calls of and where are the calls of of defunding the police, at least in terms of like not giving them militarized weapons and trying to get rid of a lot of those neo-Keynesian new Jim Crow laws of the Clinton era, broken windows theory, and so forth. Where is that in Maryland? And of course, you can also talk about New York, if you're up to date on anything happening in New York, which is your home states.
Yeah, I'm not familiar of any progress on locally about the community policing or holding police accountable.
Or even ending the even ending the drug war and the new Jim Crow laws, or
Unfortunately, I haven't heard of anything, so it could just be I'm just not in tune, or there's really not much progress to be made. You mentioned Glenn Ford, who was helped put together the Black is Back coalition, and also Omali Yeshitela is also the head of the Black is Back coalition, and I know I saw him on Kim Iverson's show the other day talking about how the FBI kicked down his door and raided him and his wife's home, for speaking out against the system. So, you're talking about some hardcore attacks on Black activists and Black revolutionaries, akin to what they did in the 60s and the 70s with the Black Panthers. So, yeah, there's still some heavy duty attacks on Black progress, Black activism. So hopefully someone can come with some better news, but I don't have much news to deliver as far as advancement on police matters.
Sounds to me, unfortunately, as if freedom is still a constant struggle, and we have to be honest. It is a pretty terrible state of affairs. And then before we get again, and then the last thing, before we get to the topic I really want to talk to you about is, I want your thoughts on. We've talked about this before, but I feel we have to talk about it again because it's getting worse. I find some of our friends of. Call them friends. Some of our supposed friends of the white socialists, the white Marxists. I don't bother with the white liberals. We know who the white liberals are. We just we roll our eyes at those people and those of the black leadership class, the Obamas of the world. What gets under my skin though is some of the white socialist, white Marxists who engage in their bitter complaints about too much identity politics, too much talk of identity politics, which is often, I find, code word for I don't want to talk about white supremacy. I don't want to talk about patriarchy. I certainly don't you dare talk to me about heteronormativity or trans liberation. And they might be great on like anti-imperialist issues, which is kind of ironic because most of the people who are targeted by this white supremacist state, the police state on steroids, which is the U.S. military, the CIA, and so forth, are our people in the continents of Africa or indigenous people outside of Turtle Islands and and Latinx folks, brown folks, Middle Eastern folks. But I want your response to this blanket stupid term that you often hear. Again, mostly white socialists, white Marxists, and so forth complain about, and certainly the far right, about too much wokeism and stuff like that. I just wanted your response to that, and what advice would you give to our people, but then also our indigenous brothers and sisters and our Latinx brothers and sisters who might feel despondent, depressed when they run into kind of brick walls like that?
Well, it depends what usually when people use the term woke, I usually ask them what do they mean by that, because a lot of people are throwing around this word and they don't even know what it means. Just like CRT, critical race theory, you ask them what that means, and many people have no idea what they're talking about. And they just after you define the word, then you can actually see what they're talking about. Do you mean anti-black when you mean woke? When someone speaks up for black justice and equality, is that what you consider woke? And is that what you consider a bad thing? Woke as a term that I was first familiar with just meant conscious, just meant awake, just meant alert. Means you're not asleep to the fact that we live in a corrupt society, that you're not asleep to the fact that we live in a systematically racist society. So if you're awake to that fact, that would be a good thing. But they've turned it into they've co-opted the word, they've colonized the word and turned it into a bad thing. And now whenever you speak out for justice or some type of alertness and awake, that you're a bad person now. So a lot of people are using the term woke, and it really depends on what they're talking about. Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, is using the term woke to attack Black studies and make Black studies illegal. First, he used the term critical race theory to water down and demonize Black studies, and now he's making the move and may have completed the move to remove AP, African American History Studies. So they don't really want you talking about anything non-white, and they consider that woke. Now they're talking about drag queen story hour, that being woke, then maybe I may be able to agree with them more than that drag queens stripping in schools is inappropriate. I wouldn't consider that woke. I would just consider that weird, inappropriate behavior. But yeah, we got to delineate and describe what's the difference. What are you talking about? Is speaking out against the system a bad thing? No, it's not. So that's the type of so-called woke I can get down with. If you're talking about some other crazy things, then it's
there are times where in the quest, at least in the arts, to have more representation of Black actors, Latinx actors, Southeast, Far East, or South Asian actors, and so forth. I think there are times where, like, in the quest of finding more representation roles in it, where it is kind of political correctness gone mad, like if we're talking about Queen Victoria, why does Queen Victoria have to be a black person? Like, okay, I understand like that. That is like, political correctness or wokeness gone mad. Okay, like I understand like, that, and that should be open to, mockery and some of the drag kings and queens, if their children's stories has some sexual innuendo in there, I would say, okay, come on, guys, like, there's a limits, like,
Right.
like, and
Right.
I say this as somebody who is an ally to the 2S LGBTQIA plus community. Look at the shirt I'm wearing. So I do like understand that to an extent, but isn't the hyper focus that either far right media or lamestream corporate, centrist or center right media, isn't that hyper focus on that, or I don't know, some or some or some academic that complains about few representation of black staff when there's a fair amount of black staff at some overpriced university. Do you think that's where you can see, okay, maybe some of those white socialists and maybe even the odd Howard Stern type of person has like a point there, but that's not the issue, and most of the people who really are complaining about too much wokeism on this or too much wokeism on that are in fact just dog whistling and making it very plain that they don't want to hear about grievances of our community and other communities that are marginalized, which I think is the issue people should be really pissed off about, not the odds overzealous activist that sometimes can be rude to I don't know, a Bernie Sanders type of person, or even a Chomsky type of person. What's your response to that?
Yeah, there's some of these so-called activists, whatever labels they may assume, the socialists, the communists, the liberals, the anarchists. There's a lot of insincerity sometimes in their arguments, like, and you can see they're not really, they don't really care about the audience that they so-called are defending. Like Black people, our priorities are, staying alive, um, getting proper health care, getting our economics right, having access to wealth and businesses and proper food, healthy food and clean air and clean, not being attacked by your government, the police, access to proper banking, access to adequate housing, and not being attacked by just not being attacked by your government or by the white capitalist companies, or not being mistreated in the workplace. There's just a lot of different issues that we need to focus on and prioritize. And then some of these so-called woke people, they want to concentrate their arguments on labels and terms and vocabulary. And I'm like, and we want to have this serious reparations talk, and then you want to talk about a certain word that you don't like. It's just, I'm like, you can't be serious. You're really not a true friend or true ally of me if you want to argue about a less meaningful topic than the ones that have a dramatic effect on our lives. Either you really want the Black people to come up, or you just want us to feel good and be called, a certain term that makes you feel good, but we're still being oppressed. But we feel better about our oppression. And I'm really not down with symbolism. They came out with a weird looking Martin Luther King statue a few weeks ago in Massachusetts. And that type of symbolism is the stuff that a lot of these white activists do. They think they're pleasing Black people by giving us statues and monuments and stuff. And first of all, the monument was strange looking. It looked like, some people said it looked like a hand holding a turd. Some said a hand looked like a penis. It was allegedly
was
Martin
it
Luther
was a
King and
monstrosity. It was a monstrosity.
right.
If you had asked Jackson Pollock or Pablo Picasso if they were alive, what they thought, that they would have gone like, "Don't ask me. This is this is so."
Yeah, so when you have to ask those type of people that advocate for that stuff, how much difference has that made for the Black community, the Black masses at large, when you put a single individual Black person in a powerful position or a political position, like the newest Supreme Court judge, or you put a so-called Black person in a vice president position, and they want to see that as a step up for Black people when that hasn't affected the Black masses in any positive way at all. So we're just not taking the symbolism anymore. We're looking for actual progress, and that's what we're going to keep the focus. And anybody who's not focusing on actual progress for the masses is not a true ally.
And I was just thinking, and I was actually thinking about you the other day, because I was thinking about you the other day when sometimes you sometimes get these white socialists, these white Marxists, and so forth, who say that like we talk too much about identity politics, i.e., our plight, at the expense of other, at the expense of at the expense of the plight of the largely white working class poor and so forth like that. But what was I going to say? Well, I just find like I just find it's hilarious how Black people are constantly told that we need to be much more that we need to be much more class conscious and stuff like that, when we've had history of like our leaders talking about that yes, institutional racism is bad, but we also have to tackle the issue of white supremacy globally and stuff like that. But the fact of the matter is like when there was the progressive era, Black people and other people, indigenous people and whatnot, we were excluded from the progressive era. When it was the New Deal era, we were excluded from that. And even when Johnson built the great, or was trying to build the Great Society, well, we knew the limitations of that, and we knew that like then many of then the Southern strategy came, and many of those Dixiecrats, which were so pissed off at and thought of Johnson as a race traitor, then joined the Republican Party, which now is the white man's party, as Lake Glenn Ford would say. But what I'm trying to say
It's
is that
just another strategy of racism to constantly deflect and distract from Black people, to focus on Black people, especially Black descendants of American slavery, is the ultimate no for a racist. You got to talk about another group. They'll make an anti-Asian hate bill. They'll make an anti-LGBT bill. They'll make a anti-Latin bill. They'll go attack any other group that's been disrespected. But you talk about one of the most disrespected group in America for the longest, and that received the longest disrespect, the Black American descendant of slave, then we're constantly told no, or wait, or delay. So that's just another tactic there that we can't fall for anymore.
yeah, it's anywho, I think at the end of the day, I think I liked you also complained twice and explained to me how sometimes when you have a rally about Black Lives Matter and so forth like that, and I do think that we do need to be building solidarity with our Latinx brothers and sisters and our indigenous brothers and sisters who are also overrepresented in grotesque apartheid, whatever you want to name it. But you're mentioning to me how sometimes some of those activists, non-Black activists, mostly white activists, when they complain about, but isn't there a little too much focus on the plight of Black people? Like, what about the poor white people? Like, come on, guys, solidarity there. And for you, and for you, it's like, and yeah, I remember like you saying that like that's just like disrespectful and like and like how dare you do this, and this is why we sometimes do, and this is why sometimes our movements can't unite because of, as you say, the white socialist or just white society in general wants to constantly change the subject. And then and then of course they blame us for Obama being a massive failure when it was really white America that liked Obama because he was a non-threatening, as I often described Obama, a boring, uninspiring, centrist windbag. now, of course, that does not excuse the Black misleadership class, and that does not excuse the racial reductionism which does exist with our people. But at the end of the day, the white establishment wanted this guy in. The Democratic DLC establishment wanted this guy and look. I'm sorry to any white person that was trying to warn people about Obama that he was a right winger, blah blah blah. But if they thought they had it bad when people called them racist for legitimately speaking out against Obama, that's nothing compared to what I was called within my own within my own personal life of being a self-hating Black person because because my bullshit detector was ringing when Obama was was running his campaign. Glenn Ford also experienced intense flack when he was trying to warn people about Obama, and I'm sure both you and Solomon to this day, even when you go to whatever media, whatever social hangout spot of Black people, I'm sure that you both probably still get a lot of finger wagging and a lot of anger from Black people when you legitimately speak out against Obama, right?
Yeah, some people are stuck on stupid. So it's always strange when a coon calls someone else a coon. It's very strange.
Yeah, I remember. I remember. I was told by white people in my school that I only liked Obama. I did briefly like Obama. That I only liked Obama because he happens to be another Black person. And it's like there's no winning with, I don't know, the pollution that is white supremacy. There's just no winning.
No.
Alrighty, on to the topic at hand. Since it is Black History Month, I want to talk about a controversial figure. For some, I prefer the term counterversial. So if I was to ask you, Troy Moten, can you explain to a Black audience and a largely white audience who the late Khalid Muhammad was? How would you explain? How would you explain this historical figure, this sort of bad apple, this sort of like rated X version of like Black radicalism that we're not allowed to openly celebrate or say that he made some good contributions to our consciousness and understanding our history and understanding white supremacy. Talk to an audience about the controversial, or I call him controversial, Khalid Muhammad, the late Khalid Muhammad.
Yeah, Khalid Muhammad was a powerful Black leader, a brilliant Black leader, a bold Black activist, someone who was unapologetically Black, someone who spoke truth to power, someone who told it like it is, was very, very courageous, and someone that was necessary and it is still necessary to this day. In this fight for justice, you need someone when you're battling a beast that is the system of white supremacy. You really need to be strong in your speech and in your actions against the racist system of America. And Khalid Muhammad was somebody who did that. As he was originally part of or came to prominence as a member of the Nation of Islam, got a leadership position in the Nation of Islam as a national spokesperson. Also later created a party, New Black Panther Party, or became a leader of the New Black Panther Party. And just somebody who took white people to task for all their evil ways, and holding down, oppressing, mistreating, disrespecting the Black population. And we need as many as those people as possible. And it was a beautiful thing to witness his work. I learned about him later in life, and luckily we have YouTube and the internet at large to look at some of his videos and hear some of his audio and his his speeches, and view some of his work. And like, wow, it's a powerful brother right there. That's a great brother right there. So yeah, I'm a fan, admirer of Khalid Muhammad. I was Every now and then I watch his interview on Donahue that he did in 1994, and just look at it in awe and say that was a beautiful display, of yeah, just pride, Black pride, uh, speaking up for yourself and challenging the system, with facts, with wisdom, and with the proper perspective of knowing that you're in you're in a country that doesn't like you at all, and wants your demise. And when you have a deep love for your people, which he did have a deep love for Black people, that you need to show it, and that he did.
Now, why did the Nation of Islam, which always, I think, throughout its existence, the Nation of Islam has always had controversy, has often followed the Nation of Islam, and I don't want to talk about the issue of Malcolm X. I have addressed that before on the program, and even that is another topic for another day. But why did Khalid Muhammad? Why? Yeah, I mean, do you want to address some of the controversies of the Nation of Islam, Louis Farrakhan, and why Khalid Muhammad? What did he say in which the Nation of Islam went? Sorry, you you crossed the line. Kind of like when Malcolm X talked about the chickens coming home to roost after the Kennedy assassination. That was basically the end of Malcolm's tenure in the Nation of Islam. What did Khalid Muhammad say? And talk about some of the legitimate controversies that he did court, which unfortunately was sort of counterproductive because it kind of fed the white paranoia media that's that Black people the Black people who talk about Black power and talk about reparations are a bunch of reverse racists, blah 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 blah, blah and all that. So talk to us about that.
Yeah. So there is some more I have to learn about Khalid Muhammad and his life, but I just looking a little bit into it, I do know he did a speech at King College where he was addressing for almost 2 hours, white supremacy. But well, in particular, the speech was talk about the secret relationship between Black and Jews, and in it he just spoke a lot. Whenever you address the Jewish population in America, you're going to be deemed as controversial, because a lot of people don't like to hear the truth about that. And then there is controversy on what is truth. Although if you look into books and past history, the documented history, you'll see one side has more truth than the other side. But he spoke a lot of truth about white supremacy, and he was really he wasn't bashful. Like I said, he was unapologetic. He was calling white supremacy out for what it is. He was calling out the Jewish involvement in slavery. He was calling out the Jewish involvement in government, both in the United States government and referred to some parts of Israel. And whenever you do that, there's going to be some pieces of the American power structure that doesn't appreciate that and will attack you for it and demonize you for it. So I understand that the United States Congress went out their way to call him out and censure him, for which he took great pride in that. But as far as Minister Louis Farrakhan, I believe he just didn't like everything that was said. He did appreciate much that was said. because Khalid Muhammad did drop a lot of truth, a lot of knowledge, a lot of wisdom, a lot of the correct perspective. And Farrakhan is an appreciator of that. Farrakhan is known for doing that himself. But I believe some of the more extreme statements that Khalid Muhammad said may have rubbed Farrakhan the wrong way, particularly if I believe he talked about killing every white baby and a white woman that that is around, and that may have not been appreciated by Farrakhan. And if you can, I think you referred to it earlier, talked about the South African killing all white South Africans. That may not have been appreciated. But outside those two statements, I don't recall anything else that was considered problematic, but I would have to look more into it. But yeah, no one's perfect. But yeah, and I would agree that no, those statements could be problematic. But and when you're talking about your people being slaughtered and massacred and killed for centuries, and the government giving the condonement, the AOK, I do understand now. The rage may overcome you, and you may say things that you may later regret. Now, I don't know if Khalid Muhammad was ever apologetic for those statements. I would like to know that.
Yes, no, he was unapologetically outspoken, and he was unapologetically never apologetic, even when when you went, whoa, brother. Calm down now. Like this is counterproductive. This doesn't help. Like the Nation of Islam doesn't help our people. Like that's kind of like how. But at the same time, it kind of. But it's funny, and Solomon might get angry at me when I say this, but for me the issue isn't Khalid Muhammad's. Okay, if he says something explicitly anti-Semitic, I do think like that requires condemnation. But I think in the end of the day, yes, this is a very thorny issue, but Jewish people, largely a white Jewish community. I'm not at all minimizing the centuries of persecution they faced, whether it was in Tsarist Russia, Eastern Europe, Western Europe, and elsewhere. Like I'm not minimizing that at all. But the fact of the matter is a lot of those Jewish communities which came to the United States or which came to Canada. Even if they may not have been personally part of the dispossession of our indigenous brothers and sisters, but when it comes to just that what I call the melting pot of white supremacy and that melting pot of anti-black and anti-indigenous racism, the Jewish community has played its parts, and I'm not even singling them out, but that's just how white supremacy and this whole ridiculous notion that we're a land of immigrants, that anyone from a poor country, whether it's in mostly white Europe and so forth, or the Middle East, can all come and everything will be all hunky-dory. But of course, that often comes if they manage to make it up that racial capitalist ladder. That comes at the expense of, again, more resources being taken from indigenous Americans, or once again, like a black person who would like to open up a bank or would like to be the owner of his own convenience store getting looked over and given to a white Jewish community, or even a Korean merchant store. And you probably know where I'm going with this, and we know that that even Koreans who have been racially persecuted by this ghastly system of white supremacy, when a Korean store merchant shoots a black girl in the head and is not sent to jail, is just given probation, literally a slap on the wrist, I don't endorse black people torching a lot of those Korean stores during the Ronnie King uprising, but come on, guys, like what do you expect when you keep treating us like shit? Eventually we are going to fight back. So yeah, your response on that, and that's basically me, de facto defending Khalid Muhammad while still condemning him for any explicitly anti-Semitic thing that he did say in his life.
Yeah, it's up to us as if we want to be truth tellers, if we want to be defenders of justice and advocates for justice, to speak the truth and not be scared to. So if a Jewish person is in a position of power and uses that power to abuse, mistreat, slaughter, and kill the black community, and then we need to say so. And there is plenty of instances where Jewish people in the Jewish community have acted, together to do that, whether it's in media, whether it's in banking, whether it's through politics, through the pharmaceutical industry. There's plenty of prominent players that are Jewish that are participating in this evil structure, and it's not anti-Jewish, or I don't even like the term anti-Semitic, because that's a term that's been muddied as well, and we can get into the vocabulary and the whole origin of that word. So I think anti-Jewish is a more appropriate, more clear term, but it's not anti-Jewish to call out Jewish people who do wrong.
And there certainly is no institutional, at least when we talk about Turtle Islands, and even in the most far right of places in Eastern Europe, there is no institutional anti-Jewish laws on the book or anything like that. There might be anti-Jewish attitudes, and there might, and of course, amongst the far right in of Europe, they'll occasionally say something anti-Semitic, but at the end of the day, they all love the state of Israel and think of it as a wonderful model for their ultra-Hungarian, ultra-Ukrainian, ultra Romanian, ultra whatever that they would like to that they would like to see. And no, apart from stupid comments that somebody like Kanye West even makes, while that might hurt survivors of people who've lost family in the Holocaust and stuff like that, that's an offensive comment by an idiotic shock jock, but that's nothing compared to the actual institution of anti-black racism or anti-indigenous racism that our people experience, which let's call it is white supremacy, right?
Yes, and it's important to separate truth from falsehoods. See, the reason I don't go out my way to defend Kanye is because he mixed both truth and falsehoods. He talked about facts and fiction, and several of his rants, he was right on. He talked about how Jewish executives in the music industry have cheated him, and not just one or two, but there was a pattern, and it's not just to him, but to many people within the media. There's plenty of people within Hollywood, Jewish people. There's a book called the title, I believe, is How the Jews Created Hollywood, and it talks about how they put together the structure, and that's not an anti-Jewish thing to say. That's a giving credit to who put together Hollywood for the most part. And you just have to call reality. Now, the stuff he talked about, Hitler was a good guy. That's where you lose people.
Exactly.
And that's when you lose credibility. I'm more apt and more ready to defend Kyrie Irving for his outlook on life and his perspective, because a lot of the things he said was on point and was okay. And you see what they did to him.
Before I share two clips with you and our audience on Khalid Muhammad at his most finest and also his most controversial or counterversial, I think it's important though to talk about I think it's important to oh yes I think it's important to actually talk about what he actually advocated. So while Jesse Jackson just wants minimal civil rights, and while Black Lives Matter certainly would like racist police to be thrown in jail, that's putting a band-aid on on a rotten system. Now, Khalid Muhammad actually envisioned when he was kicked out of the Nation of Islam, and he started the new Black Panther Party, which has nothing to do with the with the Black Panther Party that had existed in the late '60s and '70s up until the early '80s. Now, if I understood correctly, Khalid Muhammad's new Black Panther Party and what he actually envisioned as proper self-determination, liberation of our people was that okay, look, white America, you want to have your wonderful ethno-nationalist state, your all-white state with a couple of black misleaders, Latino misleaders, go have it. But we want our justice to be this, which is which is the southern U.S. states where we were brought to, where we were kidnapped, racked and stacked, child slavery, and made to pay and made to work for nothing, literally nothing. We want all those states to be ours, and we're going to have our black state. It might be a black capitalist state. It might be a Pan-Africanist, Marxist state. But that's how he felt should be justice for our people. And the new Black Panther Party had nothing to do with the old defunct Black Panther Party, but that was kind of what the new Black Panther Party was all about. So do you want to talk about that and whether you whether you think that actually is a just form of whether you think that actually is like true justice for our people, I'm curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'm a fan of Black self-determination and independence. Whether that mean independent businesses, independent schools, independent media, independent police forces, independent court systems. For all of that, because we've had a 400+ year experiment of trying the other way, and it hasn't worked. Or if you just want to say from the 1960s when the integration, then we'll just say we've had 60 years experiment of trying to do this integration thing, and you see that it has not worked to our benefit. So when something is repeatedly not working, then it's time to go in a different direction. And other races, they practice a lot of intracultural community institutions of their own. Asians have Chinatown, and Korea have Koreatown, and Jewish people have their own their schools and a lot of their own enclaves. There are a lot of their own cultural institutions. So black pride, having pride in your own race and wanting to be with your own people is not a new concept. In fact, Black people are maybe late to the game, and that we were too interested in integration, while the rest of America was not. And it's time for us to be more self-interested. So I'm for that now. Whether you're talking about technically having a separate landmass, I don't know about the feasibility of that. I don't see that happening anytime soon. But I can envision a Black Wall Street of sorts, whether that is a physical Wall Street or a more of a digital Wall Street, where we have online businesses and we have online media and online schooling. We can have our online collective and do the Black Wall Street, Black community things online, have our Black institutions online. It doesn't need to be physical like it was in Tulsa or any of the other 60 Black towns. Although that would be helpful because we see that a lot of the integrated towns still mistreat Black people. And if we had our own banking systems and our own schools, then we wouldn't have to be miseducated. We wouldn't have to be redlined through the housing system and through the banking system. We wouldn't have to be given subprime loans uh, and all the other different manifestations of racism and white supremacy. So I'm for that, and there's no problem with that.
Interesting. And before I share two clips, I just want to say that Khalid Muhammad also and now how much actual work he did in building solidarity and having coalitions with other oppressed people. I honestly can't say anything about this, but I just know that in that Phil Donahue interview that he did, he actually did express solidarity to not just Latino brothers and sisters, but also indigenous brothers and sisters, and so that's another reason why I have a huge soft spot for him, the way I do for somebody like Martin Luther King Jr. and even your colleague Solomon, who often expresses solidarity for Native Americans and has done programs of Your World News about that. So I just wanted to mention that was one of the reasons why I also had a soft spot for Khalid Muhammad, because he was responding to a person in the audience who's saying, well, what about blacks killing black people in Rwanda and so forth like that? And what about the person didn't talk about black on black crime, but he alluded to it, the inner city gang violence and stuff like that. And then Khalid Muhammad said this, and then Khalid Muhammad says, people are always throwing this at me. Look, this is what happens. You, the white men and so forth, give us the worst areas to live and stuff like that. Then you flood it with the alcohol, you flood it with the drugs, like you did our red brothers and sisters, like you did our Latino brothers and sisters, and then you make us and then you have us fight for each other, and then go, look, this is how they behave. So your response on that, and that was him also showing solidarity to the Latino population and the Native Americans and Indigenous Hawaiians and whatnot.
Yeah, that's fine with me. I focus on Black, but any true allegiance that goes to helping create that that the self-determination. We got to do. It helps to do business with other cultures anyway. It helps to do good trade, have good trade relationships. Right. I mean, otherwise you're going to have wars, physical wars, and wars over land and wars over food. So it makes sense to be as cordial as possible. So yeah, that's fine. But just knowing that we're serious about Black liberation and self-determination and making any movement forward toward that needs to be top priority. So
if we lived actually I promise this is the last thing I say before I show the clips. But could if we did have a proper just world, like a proper United Nations that actually addressed the concerns of the mostly non-white populations of the world, do you think that you could see a place like Baltimore be a city-state the way Singapore or Vatican City is, or whatever small Black community that's in a place like Oklahoma? Like if we had like a proper United Nations that actually worked for our interests and actually addressed our concerns, could we? Do you think you could see like lots of mini city states and so forth, like Detroit, it becomes its own city state. We're a mostly Black population, and maybe a few Latinos could actually have more independence or much more like autonomy from the wretched white supremacist, racial capitalist, racial caste system of the United States.
Sure, we're getting in the dream mode. We're getting in the vision mode, and anything's possible. I mean, just know that it's going to take a hell of a lot of work, and it's going to take. I always talk about how uh, revolution happens through taking the money away or taking lives away. So I like to focus on the taking the money away and redirecting and redistributing money and reallocating money and practicing group economics. But
Which
just
for
know that revolutions are not.
which for you is where the reparations campaign comes from, right?
Well, yeah, reparations is giving money back to giving money that's owed back to Black Americans. What do you call them? American descendants of slaves, foundational Black Americans, freedmen. Pick the name of your choosing, but just know that obviously our labor was stolen and our funds were stolen through freedmen banks, and we've never justly compensated, and then through years of not only of slavery but of Jim Crow and black codes and all these other uh, laws, institutionalized racist laws that we were never properly compensated. So it only makes sense. There's no real legitimate argument against reparations, especially since you know that the Japanese Americans got reparations and Native Americans got some form of reparations, and even Jewish Americans get some sort of reparations, even though the offense against them wasn't even on this land. So once you recognize that, you realize there is no legitimate uh, um, argument. And there was a reparations rally in November last year in DC, and they went over some of the counter arguments to reparations, talking about how some people say there's not enough money to pay back Black people. I said, listen, and we recognize the United States government has enough money to do whatever it wants. We just gave over $100 billion to Ukraine, give billions of dollars to Afghanistan, got billions of dollars for wars. We spend
And on top of that,
billions of dollars on the military.
and on top of that, imperial wars. Like the U.S. supported the most reactionary movements in Afghanistan, which is why it's part of my language. The clusterfuck that it is, Ukraine. It's very likely it's going to be three different countries or two different countries, because the United States supported the most reactionary movements in Ukraine and so forth. And just like that, the U.S. and Britain and France and so forth, they don't have, as the old saying goes, you don't have money to feed the poor, but you got money for wars. Like that's basically that's basically their version of modern monetary theory that they did. And so no, I completely agree. I completely agree with you. Like even if somebody does, even if somebody thought, again, our white socialists and our white Marxists, even if they thought that reparations was counterproductive, that you just need more civil rights stuff, and you just need to end the drug war, blah blah blah, and so forth. There's no real arguing that that the U.S. can't give reparations to descendants of to descendants of slaves when no, it's ridiculous. It is ridiculous, and so.
Still give millions of dollars to energy companies that had who had record profits last year, and they still receive government subsidies. So the United States government has money for whatever it wants, and then the people talk about how they didn't have any slaves, so they shouldn't be required to pay. Well, they live in a country whose government is still around. It's the same government that offended Black people, that abused Black people. So the government has to pay whether they was alive or not. Plus, they receive some of the benefits from their ancestors, that generational wealth that did get passed down, whether it's through housing or actual money. So the reparations argument, any argument against reparations, is usually just more racism at work.
And then as we go back to Khalid Muhammad, and all right, let me share let me share a clip of his. So before I have to explain the context, though, of the clip I'm going to show. So the clip I'm going to show was a debate he had with a with a guy. I guess you could call him far left. So certainly a conspiracy theorist of sorts who warned people about the kind of new world order that George H.W. Bush was envisioning, and he thought Khalid Muhammad was being counterproductive with his if you want to call them reverse racist speeches, his reverse racist speeches and some of the anti-Semitism that he did express, and thought that Khalid Muhammad was being a new Hitler. So they had this debate on whether the white man really is the devil and stuff like that. And again, this was one of those things where Khalid Muhammad is speaking a lot of truth, but it gets overshadowed in his very, very controversial and bombastic stuff. And in one part of the and this is him responding to something that the guy who was saying, you're a black Hitler, blah 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 blah, and so forth. And the guy was saying that Khalid Muhammad went, he went to a very wealthy school. His scholarship was funded by the Fords and the Rockefellers, who are the very people Khalid Muhammad claims to rail against. Khalid Muhammad addresses that, and then uses it to attack how no matter where in the world Black people are either a minority or a majority, we face institutional racism. So I really want to show that, and I'll even I'm going to show that while you respond, and then I'll show another clip of it. So here goes. One sec. All participants. Okay. So share screen. Okay. Okay. Can you see my screen?
It's coming up. Yes.
Okay. Let me close that. Okay, here goes. Here it is.
Well, let us begin with Malcolm X, my spiritual big brother, and the first great national spokesman of the Black movement and the Nation of Islam, and following him, my spiritual father, the Honorable Minister.
And you can hear okay?
Yeah, can the volume go up any?
Yeah, let me try that. Okay, that's full. Okay, let me try this. Okay, apologies if it's too loud for people, but here it goes.
Louis Farrakhan, and by God's grace and by God's permission, and with nothing to do with Anthony Hilder, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan chose me to be third in that line behind him and Malcolm. All right. And yes, it is true. I have been to Mecca all of those times, and it is also true. I did not find what Malcolm found. 7 times. Found racism among the white Arabs in Mecca so thick until you could cut it with a damn knife. Found ghettos in Mecca. I found that no matter where I went in the world, I found that no matter what the social, political, religious, economic, academic system was, it made no difference. Wherever the black-white dynamic existed, you'll find the white on top, black on the bottom. As we are victims of white capitalism, and wherever the black-white dynamic exists, you find the white capitalist on top and the black capitalist on the bottom. If it's a socialist country, you find the white socialist on top and the black socialist on the bottom. If it's a communist country, you find the white communist on top and the black communist on the bottom. If it's a Christian country, you find the white Christian on top and the black Christian on the bottom. If it's a country, you find the white Jew on top and the black Jew on the bottom. Yes, I've been to Mecca, and where the black-white dynamic exists, you find a white Muslim on top, and God damn it, you find a black Muslim on the bottom. The black dynamic exists, you find the black on the bottom and the white on top. Some of you say it's a class system. If it's a class system, then you'll find the white man as the upper class, and you'll find the black man and woman as the lower class. No, I didn't find what my spiritual big brother Malcolm found in Mecca. I found racism in Mecca, and I've found it everywhere I've gone throughout the face of the planet Earth, 196,940,000 square miles. I found it. I will. Now, listen to this damn truth about the Ford Foundation. Yeah. You read yourself, cracker. I was going to school. What was called an advanced or an accelerated student, a gifted student from elementary. They plucked us, pulled us together, about 29 of us.
Actually, let me pause that for a second. Your response to what he said.
What is the problem? I didn't hear any problems whatsoever. I heard truth. I've heard facts. I've heard proper perspective and historical accuracy. I heard current day accuracy. Yes, if you live in reality, you can't refute what was said. You know, you can't call it controversial just because you don't like the truth. Truth is truth.
And just to vindicate what he said, in fact, it's true. You look at you look at Libya after the overthrow of Gaddafi. Black Libyans who Gaddafi considered indigenous people, therefore that they had a protected status and so forth, and should have special minority rights and so forth. Slavery has been reintroduced in Libya, and Black Libyans have been either victims of pogroms or sold into slavery. And there is a lot of institutional racism that does exist in places like Egypt and so forth, where again, Black people are at the bottom, and places like Saudi Arabia and Qatar. And we know that there are Black people there. You only have to look at their football players sometimes, which means that they live in very much impoverished community, and they are discriminated because they're not a special kind of Muslim of brown Arab Middle Eastern descent. And when he talked about Israel, which is often said like, you know, all Jews are united in Israel, there's a lot of institutional institutional racism against Black Israelis, victims of police brutality and stuff like that, which is why when there were global protests in response to George Floyd, and Black people of all countries and other indigenous people and and immigrants speaking out against institutional racism, similar protests of that kind happened in Israel, led by Black Israelis. And and of course, as he said, like go to Brazil, go to go to France, come to Belgium, come to Britain, and so forth. That black-white dynamic means that we face white supremacy or a melting pot of anti-Black racism and so forth. So what he
white supremacy is global. That is the argument against a lot of the people who talk about leave America and go seek refuge elsewhere. A lot of people say seek refuge where on this planet is there no white supremacy? He talked about, and even in Dominican Republic, you got the dark Dominicans being discriminated by the lighter ones. The same
and they're
Taiwanese,
and they're vicious against Haitians, vicious against their Haitian brothers and sisters, and so forth. And we've seen constantly how Haiti is thrown under the bus by even the best left-leaning Latin American countries and so forth. Not that Africa hasn't been a good friend to Haiti, but it's just that call it what you want. In Europe we have a discrimination against the Roma people. In the Nordic countries, there's settler colonialism against the Sami people. That's considered they even call it an acceptable form of racism, and that's what our Haitian brothers and sisters face on the global scale, which is why solidarity to that besieged country is of the utmost importance, and it needs to be led by Black people and so forth. But anything you want to say before we go back to the rest of the clip?
Oh yeah, and it just reminded me of what you always like to label your white colleagues as white Marxists or white socialists, and I say, forget the latter labels, they're white. and their rate. It doesn't matter what their political ideology is if they're racist. I feel no better getting discriminated or disrespected or abused by a white socialist than a white capitalist. It does not make me feel any better to get mistreated by a white communist over a white anarchist or any other political persuasion. So when it comes to white supremacy and racism, that other label,
Who
those other
are
labels don't
ready,
matter.
who are ready as a protest vote, even who are ready as a protest vote, even to vote for the reactionary referendum, which was Brexit, and even vote for Pumpkinhead Donald Trump or even Ronald Reagan, because blacks are getting too much special treatment, and we don't even have to ask them. What's you guys' views on justice for Native Americans? Because I think we know that if they're already this vicious towards us, we know that like it's a matter of time. If so, anywho, but let's watch this. Let's finish this clip of Khalid Muhammad.
Together, we keep up with each other to this very day, and none of them are on the payroll of the New World Order, the Trilateral Commission. None of them are on the payroll foundation. None of them pay the foundation. We all keep up with each other today. They didn't mix anybody with us. They were black elders over us. We were their pride and joy. And so based on our test scores and based on our performance, and cross-born food, your thing getting naked and laying down in caskets and stuff. That ain't mine.
In case people don't know the reference, apparently when you're part of this ridiculous fraternity called the Skull and Bones of whatever overpriced college, they you have to get in the casket and people piss on you. So that's what he's referring to.
I look like in a casket naked. You probably looking at this handsome, bald-headed black man wishing he could get in a casket with me. No,
About to talk about South Africa. This is very important. People should pay attention.
He says I support Mandela, unless you know how dumb the cracker is. 29th, 1993, King College. That's one of the main things to shoot the foundation of the world. It said that I did not support Mandela. It said I don't agree with Mandela. I believe that Mandela is one of the weakest ever in any leadership position over black people. But the crack is a dumb crack. Devil. Better. I said that day that we were going to give white folks, after they have murdered our black men, women, children, and babies, and the Oppenheimers and the De Beers and others have robbed our diamond mines. We can't even wear a watch or a ring or sisters, a necklace or a bracelet. We call it jewelry, but it's really jewelry. Well, that's why they call Rubenstein and Goldstein, Silverstein, because they steal in gold and silver and rubies. All of them for Mandela to have a true commission. Yeah. And give them executive clemency and to declare. You can forgive South Africa. Forgive. Women have to do. Detract from us and took our great and we into the world and all of the sciences and disciplines to the world. And now we are just our hero and our hero in our
This is the final pause. Your responses to what he said, and which is completely 100% vindicated. Everybody needs to go watch John Pilger's documentary, Apartheid Did Not Die, about how racial, social apartheid was eliminated, but economic apartheid, that white supremacist socioeconomic system remained in place, and not one of those perpetrators of that grotesque settler colonial project on steroids was brought to justice in that sham Truth and Reconciliation Committee. And Naomi Klein has also talked about it in her book, The Shock Doctrine. So again, Khalid Muhammad ignoring some of the more. Anyways, no, he has found the money there. Troy, your response.
So I'm glad you went over some of the audio was messing up on my end, so I didn't get to hear everything, and hopefully the audience was able to hear everything. But just based on what you just said, if he was talking about the the land being stolen and the rights being taken and the money and the resources being taken, then he's absolutely right. If he's talking that none of the resources, the land, the money was given back, and he was talking about the restoration of land and money, then once again, I see no problem with it. If he, just to refer to this Black Hitler title at the bottom, do you know if Khalid ever killed anybody?
Nope, never.
Do you know if he's ever ordered an army of people to kill anybody and they successfully did so?
Has talked about revolutionary action, has talked about fighting violence with violence, but no white person has ever been killed because of any hate speech he's given.
Exactly. So, they like calling these revolutionary powerful Black speakers Hitler, but the words, the actions of Hitler never come to fruition. So, you lose credibility when you do things like that, when you make these outrageous claims calling somebody Hitler, whether it's a Khalid or a Farrakhan.
And now let's watch the now let's watch the actual controversial thing he did say. Okay, here it goes. Yeah, here it goes. And warnings of people.
24 hours in South Africa to get out of town by sundown. I say if they don't get out of town, we kill the men, we kill the women, we kill the children, we kill the babies, we kill the bride, we kill the babies. Baby, God damn it, they're gonna grow up one day to reach your babies. South Africa, I say kill the women because the women are the military manufacturing center. And every 9 months they lay down on their backs and reinforcement rolls out from between their legs on the military manufacturing center by killing the white woman. Kill the in South Africa. The hell you think they got it? They got all pressing and killing Black people. Say, kill all the God. Said that day about Mandela to let you know what he knows about me. Don't know a damn thing. So when you go to the goddamn grave, goddamn dead, because they didn't die hard enough.
I think that's a good place to end. I am going to show another clip, but Troy, your response to that.
Yeah. Yeah, when you speak about revolutions and you think about all the revolutions that happened, you figure a lot of life was taken and a lot of revolutions come through bloodshed. So it really depends if you think you can have a revolution without bloodshed or a revolution with bloodshed. So preferable, most of us preferably, and I think even Khalid preferably would like to have a revolution without bloodshed. But I think he was putting on the table that if we try revolution without bloodshed and it hasn't been working, then I think he was putting on the table that that may be the way to go. Now, once again, he didn't actually put any of these words into. He didn't turn it into action. He didn't form an army. He didn't form a militia. So we can try to defend him and say, "Oh, he was just speaking metaphorical," or he was just speaking. He was just dreaming out loud, or he was just getting pretty with his words. But you know, I just think when you actually talk about revolution, you have to really think about how revolutions in the past went, and if you think those are okay. And there's a lot of people who will talk about damn Khalid Muhammad for talking about that, and then they'll go cheer on the Revolutionary War and all the other white wars and all the other white killers.
That's exactly what I was going. But that's exactly what I wanted to. That's exactly what I was going to sort of go at. It's like because I find it so strange that like the most leftish of the white left movement will praise will praise Lenin and Trotsky and man, dude, the Russian Revolution, like they effing killed Anastasia, who wasn't even like an adult who was part of like the brutal Tsar's regime, and like Lenin and like those people like literally like murdered those people, and then like so like I just find it like strange, like okay, so like you guys are fine with that stuff, but like a black revolutionary at his when he's just like rhetorically speaking, and we know and again like no white person has died because of anything Khalid Muhammad says, and at best black people might cheer it on, but in the end of the day, black people, whether one agrees with them or not, are all kind of just that old school civil rights thing of we just want like equality. Look, we just want like you guys to stop like killing us, but don't worry, like we're not going to like take up arms against you. But if you guys hit us, we do have the right to hit back. And again, you brought up the fact that like why is it that like we can lionize the founding fathers, who Glenn Ford said those miserable sons of a bitches, who who not only were genocidaires, who were part of death squads against indigenous people, but also held slaves even before the South became the slaveocracy, as some people try to describe it. So it's okay. So it's okay for you guys to have statues of those white supremacists, but you want to take down Confederate statues. And yet Abraham Lincoln was also a white supremacist who was involved in the ongoing dispossession of Native Americans and stealing land from Mexico, and only had to be pushed to be part of the abolitionist movement. And even then, he did harbor racist views and thoughts. Why not just send all the black people to Liberia, and we could just have like our own white white only states like the white Australia or the white New Zealand policy? Your response to that?
Yeah, and once again, it's about how serious do you take people who criticize Khalid Muhammad when they'll criticize his words, but they'll either defend or say nothing about all the bombs that the United States is dropping on other countries right now. And you can go through a whole list of countries, whether it's Iraq, Afghanistan, Yemen, Somalia, Libya, what they're assisting by funding Israel's attack on Palestine. What they're doing in Africa, all throughout Africa, directly and indirectly with their direct government military and their private undercover militaries. So, I just don't like hypocrites. I don't like frauds. So you can't take anybody seriously who demeans um, a very legitimate anger, a legitimate rage against colonizers and racists and just verbal fire against them, and yet nothing to say against actual actions that's killed millions of people. You really can't take those arguments seriously.
Yes, and when he was confronted on the Donahue program, which I'll link in the pinned comment sections, I mean, he defended his comments and everything he said about South Africa, about how there's been no redistribution of wealth, no justice or anything like that, and that Nelson Mandela was basically came out of prison to be a puppet. Again, all of that he's been completely vindicated. If you watch John Pilger's documentary Apartheid Did Not Die, if you watch one of the more recent documentaries on Winnie Mandela, in which they debunk the allegations against her and say that she was the victim of a well-orchestrated smear campaign, and shame on Desmond Tutu for joining in that. Black leadership classes everywhere. And yeah, and again, like I don't endorse Khalid Muhammad's calls for genocide of the Afrikaner, of the white Afrikaner population, but again, that's just very raw anger coming from that's coming from a place of very legitimate anger. So
and you like talk. You like talking to white people who claim they're on Black people's side. What do they say? How should Black people obtain justice?
Always through nonviolent means, and to be very Gandhian and to be very MLK Jr., but MLK Jr. without actually, threatening the power structures, right?
And then if you were to bring up that hasn't worked, how would they respond?
You're talking too much about identity politics, and the moment like the class struggle is at the moment we address like the class struggle, don't worry, you guys will be taken care of. I think that's how they would. Isn't that how they would respond to like
just a complete dismissal of the Black struggle?
Like you're being too much woke, and woke makes us all broke. Like I think that's how they would respond, wouldn't they?
Because I've imagined you've had these conversations, and I don't know how deep you get with them, but I stopped having conversations with white people about Black liberation for the most part.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing. Like the moment I sense that the conversation is going to get into an awkward thing where they either reveal their racist blind spots, or they reveal that to deal with the issue of class is basically, like I said, it often is just code. You call it dog whistle or whatever it is, but it's often just code for I don't want to talk about institutional racism. I don't want to talk about white supremacy. Okay, I don't want to talk about white supremacy. I don't want to talk about the patriarchy, and I certainly do not want to talk about heteronormativity. That's basically that's often what I feel when and okay, maybe some of them come from and I think many of them do come from a genuine, sincere place when they talk about like class should be what unites us all. Racism is used as a way to divide and conquer us, but they go to an extreme place where it's like we're in other words, we get into more trouble for speaking out against racists than people who are actually racist and so forth. So when the queer community, for example, protests against Eminem's, homophobia, or women groups are protesting against Eminem's violent, misogynistic lyrics of him talking about murdering his wife for cheating on him, the response is, you guys are being too politically correct. Why are you guys getting so bent out of shape? When people would protest against the very real alt-right satire that is South Park, which often depicts us Black people as being whiny, as being very whiny people, and us being reverse racists. So in other words, we get more in trouble for calling out racism than people actually condemning racism, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah, I don't even use terms like that because it kind of legitimizes their talking points. So there's certain words that are so outrageous, certain terms that are so outrageous that I don't even give it legitimacy by using that type of language. But yeah, it's just another way of disrespecting you, and at that point, I end the conversation because I'm not interested in being disrespected. I really just need their participation when it comes to voting for voting for reparations, um, and hopefully that shouldn't be put to a vote. That's just justice that just needs to be uh, made official by the stroke of a pen.
I think it's like with Jared. It's like with Dr. Jared Ball when last year he was on the program for Black History Month, and when I asked him how do you deal with the very thorny issue of identity politics versus the class struggle, and he says, well, my response is, okay, go and do it. Go have your socialist revolution, and if you guys win and we don't have institutional racism, I'll say thank you. You were right. But until then, you go and you go and organize yourselves. But I'm going to deal with the plight of my people, and if I can build solidarity with other people, I'll do it. So
that's right.
So let's so before I show this when Malcolm X and the Nation of Islam and Black nationalists, Black power groups were depicted by a CBS story, Mike Wallace, as the hate that hate produced. The next clip I'm going to show. So this came after the Donahue interview and stuff like that. Louis Theroux, a very well-known BBC documentarian, went to New York to visit some of the more eccentric Black nationalist groups, which you can find a lot in New York. New York is a very big place, but you'll find also lots of eccentric, kind of groups, in London, and I'm sure Sydney, and I'm sure even in Paris, and he met with Al Sharpton, and we're not going to get into how Al Sharpton is a gaslighter, is part of the Black misleadership class, and is a bootlicker for one faction of white supremacy. But Theroux spent some time with Khalid Muhammad, and who was quite hostile towards him. And this was when Amadou Diallo was murdered. 42. He was gunned down. 42 shots by the NYPD, and the disgusting cracker mayor at the time, Rudy Giuliani, was the mayor at the time. He defended the police. The police, as always, were found not guilty, and I think this is even sometime after, the Rodney King uprisings. And well, anywho, let's watch this clip of the hate that hate produced. So share screen. Okay. You can see. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. Let me. Yeah. Okay. We're gonna go full screen right now. Here goes.
But its role in the Black.
I just have to pause for people who don't understand Black culture. When Khaled's going to call Amadou Diallo his brother, but he's not his actual brother. It's just a figure of speech, just like when Marxists call each other comrades. So just wanted to say that. Wow.
Right.
Wow. Your response. Oops. Wow.
Yeah, that was great.
As you can see, I even just flipped. I even accidentally just flipped my keyboards. Your response.
Yeah, that was great. That was powerful. That's a message that needs to be heard and repeated often, because it sickens me when white people and any other people who think like that dude act like they don't get it. Like when you constantly get shot at, constantly get slaughtered, and you have white society, the government, the media, and the white population at large give the okay to it.
Hmm.
Most of these police have not gotten, incarcerated. Most of them have not gotten any long, lengthy prison sentence or the death penalty. So when you are
And the
constantly getting
fact
attacked
and the fact that the people the police officers that beat the shit out of Rodney King, the fact that that again this Korean merchant shot a girl in the back of the head who was unarmed. It doesn't matter whether she was shoplifting or not, but she did shoot her in the back of the head and didn't spend a day in jail. Literally, was given probation, slap on the wrist, and then I mean, I lost count during the Obama era how many black people were murdered by the police and with impunity. No, all of them are always acquitted. Some of them never got to trial. And again, that's just the tip of the iceberg. When we look at our brown Latino brothers and sisters and our indigenous brothers and sisters, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. And I just find it very strange when people say that we should be non-violent when we protest. We shouldn't be breaking windows and stuff like that. And like I understand like where that comes from, and I imagine I pretty much fancy myself as very much a non-violent person. I try not to get angry when arguing with whoever and so forth. But it's like. But if you know that the system is unjust, if you know that what Israel is doing to Palestinians is unjust, why does it matter what the reaction is, whether it's armed, whether it's an armed uprising or even people peacefully protesting? Shouldn't like this ghastly system of white supremacy, settler colonialism, whatever you want to call it, just be disbanded? And again, in the end of the day, when we look at what the Black Panthers did, they never used violence against anyone. Malcolm X never used violence against anyone. You can say that the rhetoric was a bit like, oh, okay, and you can say that like having a bunch of people with armed guns can be quite intimidating. But the fact of the matter is that's not what reverse racism is. Reverse racism is like, well, anyways, like yeah, I mean. Yeah, your response to that, and feel free to smash that argument that people constantly use. That like, your response.
Let me ask this. If I was to argue someone who was arguing that guy down, if that guy's mother was to be slaughtered by a person, and then that same person went on to slaughter that dude's father, and then that same person went to slaughter that dude's brother, and each time you told the police and the court system that this person is murdering my family, and the government does nothing, what would that guy do? Would that guy continue to watch that perpetrator continue to murder his family, to slaughter his family, or would that guy get a gun and handle it himself? And then, so when white people talk like that, you can ask them that question. You can personalize it, and maybe some real answers may come out. And also, a lot of people, they like to envision it on when it comes to the military, then and the United States military fighting back, then they think it's okay. They can see a place for violence. So if a foreign country was to attack United States, would these people talk about maybe we should go to United Nations and plead for mercy and tell them that a country is attacked our nation and that we should just wait non-violently until the United Nations does something? And then as our fellow citizens continue to get killed and slaughtered by the hundreds and by the thousands, should we just continue until the World Health Organization acts, until the International Monetary Fund takes their money away, until the World Bank does something, and then if all those institutions do nothing on the international scale, no other country comes to our rhetorical defense, what should we do? Should we just continue to get slaughtered, or should we shoot back? Most of those white people would say get to shooting. So,
Exactly.
when it comes to either on an international military scale or when it comes to personalizing it, to say, well, what happens if somebody is picking off your family one by one and no government that's supposed to protect you is doing anything? How would you respond? Maybe you'll get a sane answer out of them, if they're being genuine, which most of them are not.
And you know even Martin Luther King Jr., who was committed to nonviolence to the very end, to even the bitter end, when he was thrown under the bus by many people. Yeah, when he was thrown under the bus by many people, speaking out against the Vietnam War and so forth like that. So he would always say, "Look, I'm not for people breaking widows and stuff like that, but you have to understand, like it comes from a place of real hurt, and these are people dealing with not just white supremacy but the violence of the economic system." I think Gandhi once said that violence is the worst. No, that poverty is the worst form of violence. And I often wish that our indigenous brothers and sisters weren't so Gandhian when they came to speaking out against the white supremacy that they've been subjected to since this ghastly settler colonial project you know was founded, the United States, by the founding fathers, those miserable sons of a bitches, as Glenn Ford would say. Right?
Wow. Well, I forget how the story ended for Gandhi's people. And I do know Gandhi was a vile, racy black racist, so I don't tend to refer to him. But I do wonder if Gandhi's family continued to get slaughtered, and how long would he continue that peace model? Even Martin Luther King in his later years, in his last few years of life, he was like, it makes sense to defend yourself.
Interesting. And as we wrap up, and before we get to this question, there anything you want to say about the legacy of Khalid Muhammad, and the reason why I actually felt comfortable to actually do this program and have you come on to do this program was, I actually, when I went to London last summer to visit several friends there. First time traveling with the outbreak of the pandemic and stuff like that. And I thought that, and I was with two friends who were communists, actual communist, Marxist, Leninist, Maoists, and another friend of mine who's starting to become more involved in left-wing activism in London. I thought, let me show them Khalid Muhammad and be curious their response. And all of them were actually overwhelmingly quite positive about Khalid Muhammad. And like me, they said, "Okay, time out on the reverse racism and the white genocide." But they're all like, "Guys, spot on. I don't see anything controversial, that he's saying." And again, it goes back to, okay, that's probably a little bit anti-Semitic, but what he's saying about, like, white Jewish and black relations is spot on. And then that's when that's when I thought to myself that, okay, I think we can we can air we can talk about Khalid Muhammad in a rational, objective manner. And anything you want to say about Khalid Muhammad before we get to the questionnaire and wrap up this interview?
Yeah, just that yeah, you should be proud to talk about, discuss, even admire, respect Khalid Muhammad. He said a lot of truthful things, and if you're a fan of the truth, you should be a fan of people who speak the truth. If you're a warrior for your people and realize that you're in a fight to fight one of the most vicious systems in the world, then you're going to have to be strong and bold and just fierce in both your speech and your actions. And you got to advocate the people who are courageous enough to be that way. You know, there's not too many people like Khalid Muhammad because you could put your very life on the line just speaking how he spoke. You know, the U.S. government, the U.S. media, and all the institutions don't like people speaking like that, but it needs to be done more. So we should replicate and duplicate that type of person, the warrior status, the boldness and the courage. That's the only way it stops. There is no meek, shy way to defeat institutional racism and white supremacy. When people talk about they were talking about the race war in that last clip, and Khalid Muhammad, I think, responded appropriately, said the race war is already here, and white people started it. It's just that black people have to figure it out that they're in a race war and they have to respond appropriately. You know, you cannot continue to get shot at and not respond and not defend yourself. So, you know, I'm very glad that you're not afraid to speak about Khalid Muhammad and compliment him where compliments is due and praise him where praise is due, because there's a lot of praise that he is worthy of. And you don't need any white people's validation of Khalid to praise him, whether they like it or not.
Might be the victim of cancel culture after after I upload this, but we'll see. But anywho,
oh, that's right. Yeah, you can't be afraid of no cancel culture. I mean, man, all the revolutionaries that you respect, all the activists that you respect, if cancel culture was on their mind, they would have never said what they said. So forget cancel culture. We're here to speak. We're here to make progress. We're here to have justice. Justice is not afraid of no cancel culture. But we gotta go to Rumble. We'll go to Rumble. We gotta we gotta get our own servers and start our own network.
I have an Odyssey channel which I have to spend 2 months building along with my SoundCloud channel. But anywho, we end this program. Before we end this program, we usually end the program with the questionnaire that was done by Marcel Proust and later the French broadcaster Bernard Pivot, and later perfected by the late great James Lipton of Inside the Actor Studio. Troy, it's your turn to do it, so let's do it. Troy, what is your favorite word?
My favorite word as of late is courage.
What is your least favorite word?
Cowardice.
What? Cowardice.
Cowardice.
Okay. What turns you on spiritually, creatively, psychologically, or emotionally?
What turns me on? Courage turns me on. Intelligence, wisdom. Learning.
That's nice.
I like.
And then what turns you off then?
Stupidity, ignorance, foolishness. Once again, cowardice. Compliance to evil itself.
So is that code for bootlickers of empire and the Blackness leadership?
It's code. That's right. Bootlickers, coons, yep, all of that. Sambos, yep.
What sound or noise? What sound or noise do you love?
The sound of justice.
What sound?
I don't know.
And then what sound or noise do you dislike?
Every time I cross the tunnel or the bridge in New York City, the sound of cars honking like they don't know how to use a horn. That's it's real weird to me.
Then
besides that, the sound of stupidity and racism.
And what's your favorite curse word?
I don't curse. I don't.
but you must have a favorite curse word, being a person who loves hip hop and good black stand-up comedy and so forth. Any curse, any particular of the 7 dirty words, as George Carlin would say, that you like?
George Carlin, that's someone else who someone needs to study. People need to study and really revere and bring back.
Yeah, I completely agree. So, but no particular curse word that's your favorite.
You know how old black people say shit. That's particularly amusing.
And what I'm fascinated. I'm going to be fascinated with this answer. What profession, if you weren't doing the independent journalism that you do with your world news and being a small business person who helps out other businesses, both large and small. So if you weren't doing that, what profession would you love to do?
Yeah, no real profession. I just like learning and sharing knowledge. So that could be an educator, it could be a consultant, it could be a coach of some kind.
You have a degree in public health, so I'm surprised that that doctor's not your response, or running your own special black clinic to help out particularly impoverished, well, mostly impoverished black people. So I'm surprised
You
that
know
doctor.
how corrupt this medical system is.
We won't get into that. We won't get into that
medical
because we won't get into that. We've already been talking for 2 hours about Khalid Muhammad. We're not going to open up. Okay. All right. No problem. What profession? What profession would you absolutely not want to do under any circumstances, though?
No, a toll booth worker. Well, no, they're obsolete now. A toilet cleaner, I suppose.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And final question before I let you enjoy your evening. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say as you arrive at the pearly gates? And even if you're an atheist, and maybe you're proven wrong, what would you like? What would you like to hear a deity or two or three or four say to you as you arrive in the afterlife?
Good job. Well done. You save lives. You help people. You did well. But yeah, I don't need to wait to the afterlife to hear those words. I would like to hear those words now. So I'd put in more work.
Well, Troy, you and Solomon Kamajan are what John Pilger calls unsung heroes. You guys are definitely what Howard Zinn says, those people in history who are never acknowledged and are always criminally overlooked. So you're constantly always doing good work. We are joined on this edition of 1+1, our special Black History Month special, our special Make Me Want to Holler, all things the Black diaspora, with a particular focus on Khalid Muhammad. And we are joined by Troy Moten, who's the economics editor and part of the editorial team at Your World News. Troy, thank you so much for this conversation.
Thank you very much.
This was a long time coming. I'm glad we did it. And please give my best to Solomon and the rest of the team at University and Your World News. And thank you so much for this.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.